gonna know what hit him. And I'm gonna tell you that straight up. You talk about me being chinny, you don't even know what's coming. You say I gotta worry about a right hand, you gotta worry about all hands coming at you at all times.
You think it's just the right hand?
I'm telling you,
that's
dude,
your downfall.
It's a whole bunch of things. My guy, I could do it. I can break you down right now. And you lucky you're not fighting. I can fight tomorrow. You lucky we're not. You lucky we're not fighting today. In reality, I'll put you in a fucking stretcher.
You wouldn't even make weight. You wouldn't even make weight, boy. Look at you.
Oh, hey, gentlemen, listen.
Come on, man.
You're in great shape. You guys can fight June 5th. June 5th, gentlemen.
Get it off.
Let's keep. No. Hey, come on. Come on, do it right. June 5th. You get it June 5th. June 5th. You don't get paid to fight now. You get paid to fight June 5th.
I'm gonna tell you something, my man. You are gonna be a fucking example of why I'm gonna put everybody on their ass. And you know what? I'm gonna put my foot up your neck, my dude.
I'm taking all your belts.
All right.
You ain't shit. Yo, you should be thanking me, my guy. You should be thanking me.
You should be thanking me.
You should be thanking me.
Jerry,
undisputed lightweight world champion. And that right there. Hold on.
My team got this far for you, boy.
Hey,
my
guys,
team.
I ain't gonna hold him back.
I know.
Hold him back.
But we have questions from the media.
I ain't gonna touch you.
We have questions. Can we have a seat, guys? The media from around the
You
world
ain't gonna
wants
do
to talk
shit.
to
I ain't
you.
gonna touch you. What you gonna do, my man?
All right, June 5th. Hey.
All right, we are here now. Actually, it's about 10 days away from the $49.99 Fight.tv pay-per-view with Teofimo Lopez. I'm going to go ahead and say it and get it out the way. I don't view Teofimo Lopez as undisputed. There, I said it. But for the sake of semantics, undisputed 135-pound lightweight champion. I like to say that, including the Ring magazine, he has 4 belts and a half. A half of the WBC because he's franchised Devin Haney WBC. Some bullshit. We'll talk about that later on in the video. WBA Super World, IBF, WBO, and then the highly coveted legendary Ring magazine title. So he's going to be taking on his IBF mandatory challenger, George Kambosos Jr. here, as we see it on the clip here with the 3+, +2+, 3+ inch heels on right here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say it that June the 19th is a very, 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 very busy day. Here in the United States is a holiday called Juneteenth. You need to look it up. Very influential holiday among African Americans and for the country as a whole. But let's talk about the June 19th schedule. Now, talking about this card first, just to give you what the card's going to be, Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos. For Sean Cruz DeZern versus Elaine Selderus, undisputed for the 168-pound women's titles. That deserves his own video, which I probably will do. Michael Hunter, IBF contender. He's actually supposed to be fighting an IBF Eliminator to be the mandatory for Anthony Joshua's IBF title, or who may ever have that at that time. But this is just a stay busy fight against Mike Wilson. Andy Vences versus Jono Carroll. And then a recent ad, you're going to have former UFC champion Vitor Belfort versus Mike the Real Tarzan Holston in an 8-round cruiserweight boxing match, or is this an exhibition? Willie Monroe Jr. is also on that card. Charles Conwell is also on that card. The Chinaman Zili Zhang is also on that card, and Ray Robinson. It's a very, very stacked card, but for the whole night, you have that card on Fight.tv. You have over on Showtime, Jamal Charlo defending his WBC 160-pound middleweight title against Juan Macias Matillo, Isaac Cruz versus Francisco Vargas, Angelo Leo versus Aaron Alameda. Then over on the Zone, well, actually it's not listed as the Zone. It might not be on the Zone anymore. Jaime Munguia is going to be fighting former 154-pound WBO champion, current WBO 160-pound contender. He was supposed to be taking on Mashu Saluski, but Saluski's had some injuries. Then, and that's a Golden Boy card, by the way, then over on ESPN, you have the return of 118-pound bantamweight champion Naoya Inoue versus Michael Desmaranis, defending his WBA and IBF bantamweight titles. Michaela Mayer defending her WBO, newly won WBO 130-pound title against Erica Farinas. Adam Lopez versus the return of 122-pound WBO champion Isaac Dogbay. Then also on the same platform as Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos, Fight.tv, You're going to be having Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. versus Hector Macho Camacho Jr. in the exhibition. I covered Julio Cesar Chavez Sr.'s last exhibition against Jorge Arce. It was exciting. They were really out there fighting to hurt each other. No bullshit. You have Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., which is going to be, in my opinion, the biggest, most high-profile fight of the night, taking on Anderson the Spider Silva. Yes, Anderson Silva, free of the UFC and MMA, is finally in a boxing ring in an 8-round cruiserweight boxing match. Omar Chavez, the brother and son, the brother of Chavez Jr. and the son of Chavez Sr. is taking on the brother of Canelo Alvarez, Santos Barragan. If you don't know, that's his real name, Canelo Alvarez, Ramon Alvarez. Then you have the return of Felix Stern versus James Kraft. Remember years and years and years back when Oscar De La Hoya was masquerading at 160, he in a tune-up fight, he had fought Felix Stern and got a gift decision before going on the very next fight to get knocked out via a brutal body shot by Bernard Hopkins. I guess what I'm trying to say is, and you also have the return of Yuri Foreman versus Jimmy Williams and Australians Rohan Murdoch versus Les Sherrington. So I guess what I'm saying is, before I bring my colleague Big J in, is I don't see a way this fight is going to succeed on pay-per-view, especially with what Triller's been going through with their fights, with both Jake Paul fights being heavily streamed, the Mike Tyson card, Jake Paul was on that card, being heavily streamed, heavy rumors and speculation that Mike Tyson has not been fully paid from Triller, and obviously he's no longer with Triller. Remember, this card was supposed to feature Mike Tyson versus Evander Holyfield, then Teofimo Lopez and George Kambosos as the chief support. Then they added, on the same press conference here, you'll see they had Evander Holyfield versus Kevin McBride. Now that looks like it's not even going to be on Triller, or maybe even another platform if the fight takes place at all. So Triller as a platform is in trouble. But I'm going to take it over to Big J right now, and I'm going to put the main event boxing pay-per-view page, and we're going to talk about what's been going over in Australia in regards to coverage for this fight. Big J, where's the fight going to be taking place? Well, broadcast over in Australia, and how much will it cost? Actually, it's here on the screen, $29.95. Can you give the viewers the particulars? And also, please take your time out, like and subscribe.
Right. So the particulars are Sunday, 20th of June, because it's the 19th day there for you lot. Kickoff time will be 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Yeah, $29.95. That's pretty much it. It'll be on a Sunday morning, 11 a.m., which is pretty common for Australian pay-per-views. So
you were mentioning before how now we're seeing that next week, and we're on the main event page, 7 days and 11 hours. You're going to have Paul Gallen versus Justice Hooney. That's $60. But then when you look at this Undisputed Championship fight that's taking place, normally when the big major championship fights take place over in Australia, this one's only $30. Now, we talked about it in our last video about how George Kambosos is not getting what we feel is the media coverage he deserves for a fight of this magnitude. But can you go into more detail? Because I do have this article that you sent to me from the Sunday Morning Herald, and I pulled it up on the screen here from a writer by the name of Paul Lutton in regards to a quote. The headline of the article is, "I'm doing it in the big league. Kambosos says Aussie fighters talk too much." Can you elaborate or go into detail on that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, for starters, it's Phil Lutton, not Paul Lutton.
My bad, Phil.
Okay. Is the writer. Yeah. And look, let me put this way. If this was Tim Tszyu getting his shot at 154, this would be all over the news. It would be all over everything. Main event would have a bloody 8-foot-long hard-on for this, and they would be doing everything they can to promote the bust out of it. Right?
Yeah.
Right. They would be having specials, documentaries, every single fight he's ever had on main event on. I can tip for 3 bloody days, like they did for the Mundine Green rematch. They would be doing everything they can to promote the absolute buggery out of this fight. But because George is fighting overseas, which makes no difference, and is the B side, and I don't think has ever appeared on a main event card, they're not doing it. I mean, there's been I could count maybe 3-4 articles. Maybe I think George spoke to Channel 7 about a month ago before he went to the States, or why he was in the States. There has been little to no coverage of a fight of this magnitude. Okay, granted, it's a week and a half out. Maybe they might do something else. But, I mean, even Alex Leopold, when he took on Klitschko, had more coverage than this. So I'm not very happy with the coverage that, or lack of coverage that he's getting for arguably the biggest opportunity Australia's ever had. Certainly lightweight. There's no argument there.
I mean, I guess my question is this. Now, the fight is broadcast on Main Event pay-per-view, though. So, therefore, you would think that they would have started putting more coverage in it. It's almost like they're being, you know, that as a network, they're like, all right, yeah, we have to show this. And, you know, now we've already said, I guess, you know, to move on, that if George Kambosos was to win, in a lot of fans' eyes, it'll be because Teofimo Lopez loses, i.e., an example, Teofimo Lopez has a bad night, whether it's weight, whether it's, you know, the newfound success, the money. You know, we've been trying to find ways for George to be able to win. And from what we see, he doesn't have the power. He doesn't have the size. Now, we're going to be relying, if he was to win, and I'm not picking him, you know, no disrespect to George, but we got to be realistic. If he was to win, it would be movement, speed, and ring generalship. I mean, what's your prediction on if, you know, like, how can George win this fight, and who do you see winning, and how do you see the fight going?
Well, I see the fight. I see this fight very similar to Anae versus Maloney. Yeah, I mean, I sort of conned you into thinking that Jason was going to win, and then poor old Jason got knocked out. So I see that probably going around the same. I think George is going to hang in there for a good 4 or 5 rounds, and then TA will just clip him, and then it'll all turn to shit. So I think it's going to be pretty similar to that, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, obviously I want him to win, but compared to the magnitude of fights that Lopez had, compared to the magnitude of fights that George has had, you know, it's apples and oranges, really. I mean, you know, George is a phenomenal boxer for sure, but I don't think he's going to get over. I don't think he's going to get over this one. I mean, I'm happy to be wrong. I'm certainly happy to be wrong, but there's just too much going against him for this. I mean, but it happened. It can happen, sure. I mean, heaps of Aussies have won world titles when they've had no chance in hell. So, but I think that TA will probably get him 7, 8 rounds. But if the best Teofimo doesn't turn up on the night, if Teofimo doesn't take this seriously or just thinks it's going to be easy, George will get him. So that's yeah. I think you know, if it goes a distance, yeah, it'll be very surprising.
All right. Well, let's go look at the division as a whole. Now, if you don't know, here are the champions of the division. Now, as I said, I look at Teofimo Lopez as not being a full WBC champion. I just can't say it. I just can't bring myself to say he is the champion, especially when you have Devin Haney out there. So let's run down the division really quickly. Teofimo Lopez, franchise champion. Devin Haney, the champion, WBC champion. Teofimo Lopez, WBA Super World, IBF, WBO, Ring Magazine. Gervonta Tank Davis. Now, when it comes to the WBA for the boxing fans, you know, hardcore fans, you know where I'm going with this. But for the casuals, I have our rankings pulled up here from FightView360.com. The link is right down below in the description box. The rankings are updated in accordance with all the major sanctioning bodies, monthly, sometime weekly, depending. So you have Gervonta Tank Davis right now, who's the WBA world champion. But in his next fight, just a week later, he's going to be taking on Mario Barrios at 140. Now, the big key players at 135 pounds right now, Teofimo Lopez, of course, Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, who's on a medical hiatus, I guess you can say it. You have Javier Fortuna, who's going to be taking on Jojo Diaz for the WBC interim title that has been vacated by Ryan Garcia due to his, you know, medical issues, mental health. Lomachenko, former WBC champion and unified champion at 135 pounds, who clearly, in my opinion, lost to Teofimo Lopez. He just came on 3 rounds too late. Do I feel he can defeat Lopez possibly in a rematch? I think so. What's your thoughts on that before I continue on, Jay? Do you think Lomachenko will have a chance in a Teofimo Lopez rematch at 135 if it were to happen?
I believe so because even though he left his run far too late, I mean, what he did in round, was it 7 or 8? He should have did in round 1.
Yeah.
Because he really dominated the last half of that fight.
I wouldn't say the last half, the last 5 rounds, but yeah, I get you, your opinion.
Last 5 rounds, yeah. What he did in round 8, he should have did in round 1, because by the time that he turned it on, Teofimo already had the fight won.
Yeah.
So it was just a matter of just running out the clock for Teofimo and not doing anything stupid. So, but that's another thing George has to do if he wants to win. Rush him from the opening bell, slip 50 into him before the first 10 seconds passes. So, Lomachenko, obviously, he does have the skill set, and he does have the skill set to avoid that power of Teofimo. I mean, he proved it in the last 5 rounds of that fight that he can outbox and do what he needs to do to beat Teofimo. But I think if it does go a rematch, Teofimo, I think once he gut shots him, that's going to change the whole thing. I think it will just go exactly the same way.
Yeah. So so moving on. Right now, it's looking like if Teofimo wins, he wants to move to 140 pounds. And that makes perfect sense to me because the winner, I mean, if Teofimo wins, then he can fight Josh Taylor, and both of those guys would be undisputed at 140 and 135, both fighting each other. So that right there would be historic. And I really can't think of any other way, any other fight to take outside of that. Now, when it comes to Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez's claim to undisputed is not his fault, but it's tainted. There's an asterisk next to it. There's this little star. It's like, all right, but you have Devin Haney out there. So even though Devin Haney got clipped by Linares just a couple of weeks ago, you know, Devin Haney still is a fight that Teofimo Lopez, even if at 140, they have to fight each other as long as they keep winning. Now, right now, I can't say that I have confidence that Teofimo Lopez, if he beats George Kambosos, is going to fight Devin Haney. I really feel that he would either fight Ryan Garcia, or he would fight, or he would move to 140 and fight Josh Taylor. Because Devin Haney right now, he doesn't bring in the more money than Ryan Garcia. And also, because he's a franchise champion, meaning Teofimo, Devin Haney doesn't have to fight him. I mean, Teofimo doesn't have to fight him. So we are going to be here during fight week. We're going to be here for the final press conference. If they're a media workout, we're going to try to make sure we get a link to stream that. Also, the weigh-in and, of course, the post-fight press conference, we will be here. Closing thoughts, Big J?
Well, closing thoughts, I hope. I really hope that in the next 10 days that a more media attention is brought to the fight. I like what George said in the article that Phil Lutton wrote, the fact that he did it for the long haul. He went overseas early. He's done what he needed to do to earn his title shot, and he didn't just stay in Australia being a big pond and a big fish in a little pond. He went over and he did what he needed to do to earn his title shot. I really hope he does pull it off because it'll be the biggest achievement you could probably argue is Jeff. I want to ask you, what do you think's bigger, Jeff beating Manny or George getting Teofimo?
Right now, well, it depends on how you look at it. Status-wise, because of, the cultural icon that Manny Pacquiao is, I think it's overall bigger, but status would be George Kambosos because he would be undisputed and have all the belts of the 4-belt era. So that right there is going to be historic. And also, the Manny Pacquiao, as you know, a lot of people, there's many that still don't feel that Jeff Horn won. So I really personally, because I guess maybe because I'm a hardcore boxing fan, I think that if George Kambosos was to defeat Teofimo, it would be bigger.
Yeah, fair enough. So, but I hope he does it. But
we'll
it's hard
see.
For me to say it. It's hard for me to say it as an Aussie because I want him to get in there and just crack Teofimo's teeth out. But we'll see.
Yeah. Well, right now, as I said, I'm going to be here ordering the fight $49.99 on Fight.tv. As you can see, 10 days, 13 hours, 10 minutes before the card starts. Overall, a nicely stacked card. But there's going to be so much going on in boxing. Boxing fans are going to be really heavily divided. And these main events, are going to be likely happening at the same time. And then you're also going to definitely likely have UFC that same night. So, you know, I mean, good luck to both fighters. I don't see the pay-per-view doing, you know, very well. Also, here's another note. HBO's Jim Lampley is now going to be a commentator for Triller going forward. And Triller may be close to having a deal with Golden Boy Promotions. As you know, Oscar De La Hoya is supposed to be returning. He was supposed to fight, well, it was rumors and negotiations for him to fight GSP, George St. Pierre, but the UFC wouldn't allow it to happen because George St. Pierre, even though he retired from this UFC, he can't fight anywhere else until he fulfills whatever fights were left under his UFC contract. So
they probably have a no-compete clause as well.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, so we don't know, and it's not looking likely that Oscar De La Hoya is going to be fighting in July. After all, it is July the 9th right now. And they just lost Jake Paul to Showtime, who's going to be taking on Tyron Woodley in August. So Triller as a platform is not looking too good, but let's see what they have planned because they do got some money behind them. And also they just made some upper management moves by adding a guy by the name of Peter Khan, who is heavily affiliated with MTK Global, who is one of the biggest boxing management groups in the world, with fighters such as Tyson Fury, Billy Joe Saunders, my God, and the list goes on. So,
who do you think? Oh, sorry. Who do you think would fight realistically fight De La Hoya? Because remember, somebody at Binker called him out.
But he won't. Oscar De La Hoya, they want to fight that they know he can win, that it won't be a hard fight, and that they can possibly milk for him fighting another fight after. It won't be somebody fresh like Saki Obika, or probably, as you can see, the first move already showed you what they're trying to do. They went after a UFC fighter. You know, so they're not trying to have Oscar De La Hoya, and no, they're trying to have him against a fight, you know, that they can win, and also a fighter that can add some buzz. Saki Obika, nah, I don't see it. I don't see a fighter, you know, even though Saki Obika is long in the tooth right now, I don't see Oscar De La Hoya fighting a boxer in his first fight. They're looking for some UFC fighter, you know, or some mixed martial artist that has a name. If Donald Cerrone wasn't still fighting in UFC, they probably would have picked somebody like him.
Fair enough.
You know, so please take your time out, subscribe. This is TstreeT Controversy and Big J with FightView360.com.